Good morning, everybody. The European markets will open in 5 minutes. Live on all three. So we are good to go, and I should be coming through live, loud, and clear. Today is my last day with you before my holiday. It means that I'll be doing the EU session and I'll be doing the US session. And then I am on quote-unquote holiday, which I kind of have to tell you I'm not. There are some things that I want to do in the month that I'm off, and I will share that with you, and I look forward to showing you when the time is right. So, just less than 4 minutes to go. And we are expecting a slight gap down in the German DAX and also in the FTSE. I had a good, when I left you, I traded a bit more, I traded the Nasdaq. I wanted to show you. It doesn't look like a lot, I tell you. But it was this area here. I shorted above, I lost the number bar, but I shorted above this one here. And of course I went, all right, here we go. Oh, it looks good. Oh, it doesn't look good. But then it began to accelerate. A friend of mine sent me a message to say, God, these bounces in the Nasdaq are big. And yes, they can be quite sizable if you're trading reasonable size. Anyway, I was pretty chuffed myself because it's not so often that I trade the US markets later in the session. And I thought, no, do you know what? I think there is something here. I just gotta be patient. And then you start applying, the whole, retracement, and you think, oh, why didn't I just wait for the 50% retracement? Why did I short there? I could have shorted it a bit higher. But in the end, it worked out. And for the record, I didn't run it all the way down. I ran it down to the most immediate low. Okay. So it is Friday, and with that, a relief rally. Looking at the daily chart, yesterday was a rough one, but we are sort of just retesting the lows from Monday. So with 18 seconds to go. I will map in Espresso, which is up here, and I'll place a buy order. So there you go. There's the buy and the sell. So I'm deleting the sell order, been filled on the buy order. And I will move that stop loss. I only want to risk about 40 points. So there you go. Espresso long, DAX. Target, I'm going to go with 40 points. I'm going to move stop loss to break even as well. There you go. Got my 40 points. All right. Thank you very much. I don't know if you saw that, but I had increased the stake size now. My God, I didn't even put in the numbers on Telegram. Plus 40. Entry and exit. There it is, posted in Telegram. And I'll show you here in YouTube as well. Espresso entry long, 24,777. That Espresso is entry is 17 points above the high of the 5-minute candle just before the market opens. I went for a 40 risk, 40 reward, because that's what I felt like doing today. I had increased my trading size by 5 lots because the account is bigger. So there you go. Quite clinical this morning. So, next trade, looking here at the FTSE. Impressive. First bar positive. No, don't know if you believe in that, but what we could try and do is we can try and build a position in the FTSE where we buy above prior bar high. So um, you have a first bar positive, and you now have the development of an inside bar. However, what we could do, and I placed an order in absolute tiny lot, but it was just more for the principle of it, saying, okay, so what happens if we buy above a prior bar high of the opening? How would it have worked, say, on the previous day? Well, let's look at yesterday. Here's the open. How would it have worked if I had built a position below prior bar low? Uh, well, the opening bar was the low of the day. Okay, so we saw a reversal. So the first push above, the moment it begins to build above there, well, that's over here. And so what happens if I buy above? Good things, seemingly. So we could try that just for the principle of it. We'll just trade like a 1/20th. It was more the principle of what's the right thing to do. I know I'm getting a bit old, but you know what I would like to do? I would like to go to that concert in, I think it's Belgium or Holland, called Tomorrowland. Okay, so I'm filled in a long position in the FTSE. Tiny size. Uh, just the principle of it. Okay, what happens if I build position above? I should do the same in the DAX. Maybe it will afford me a slight retracement. I'm waiting for school run, you see. Yeah, I just love electronic dance music, and I've seen this thing called Tomorrowland, and there's a DJ. I think I'm a little bit in love with her. Her name is Emilia Lenz. Emilia Lenz. I think that's her name. So Stefan is telling me that Tomorrowland is in Belgium. Cheers, Stefan. AA has just said to me saying, "Oh my God, my dream is to go to Tomorrowland too. Let me know if you go. I'm not a creep." I didn't think you were AA. But more to the point, are you as old as I am? Will we stand out in the crowd like the CC top kind of people? And uh, someone called Jackie says, Tomorrowland, you won't regret. I've experienced it twice in my life. So there's a Tomorrowland in Bangkok. Doable. AA saying, I'm 40 years old, so I don't stand out like that, but I'm 192 centimeters, so I do stand out. Well, fair enough. I'm quite tall myself, right? So I don't think the DAX is gonna afford me that little retracement. It's still there, the buy order, and well, the FTSE has filled the gap, and I'm waiting for school run and just making conversation. I really wanted to show you what it would be like to build a position. We have two bull bar mounts. Okay, so tell you what I'll do. I will place a buy order here. Now at the low of candle 3. And so now I think I shall add to the FTSE. Are we expecting a big rally today? Sorry, something just went down the wrong throat, so I'm a bit. So it's her. That's Emilia Lenz. And so I'll be looking at the YouTube if I'm working out, and I'll put on the music live from Tomorrowland. And I'm looking at this podium. I'm thinking, how the hell do they operate that machinery? I mean, look at it, like a million buttons. So I was a bit impressed. I was a bit starstruck. There you go. Let's try and get back to business. Okay, so I have placed a couple of orders in the DAX. I'm now receiving messages from people saying, "Oh my God, I can't see you as a raver." Well, you would be surprised. Thank you, Lars. Lars is sending me an image of an old man dancing, really hunched over. Not sure I'm getting the fill anywhere, but I'm cruising in the FTSE. Look at it. Cruising. Thank you, Stefan. Uh, I am kind of waiting for. I decided that today I just want to gonna play it very sterile, very clinical. I don't actually enjoy trading when I trade clinically, because to me trading is also an expression of my mood and my desires, an extension of who I am, where I am. Am I passive? Am I aggressive? Am I ambitious? Am I I was going to say, am I thirsty? Am I hungry? Am I tired? But sometimes it is as well. But on the day of my holiday, and it's not a holiday, that's the irony of it. It's generally not a holiday. Perhaps I'm a little bit excited, but also a little bit sterile. It's like, okay, I'm gonna take espresso, and I'm not gonna add. I'm just gonna take it easy. I'm deleting these orders. They're clearly not gonna fill me. So I wanted to be a buyer above bar 3, sorry, bar 2, but that didn't take my order. And now I want to be a buyer. So I sort of keep, the idea is to just keep adding, but obviously try and move the stop loss up. I know I should sleep, but the voices in my head goes boom, boom, boom. It is the voices in my head. Why don't I go through the espresso just so that if anybody has any doubts, this beautiful example could work. Before the open, I mark the last 5 minutes. And there I'm framing 7:58 to 7:19. Then I add 17 points to 58, which by my recollection, by my math, is about up here to at 75. Oops, sorry, too much. 17 points. So now I'm saying up here, I want to be long the DAX. And I would do the same for the short side. I would measure 17 points lower. And then I would sell short at 702. So now that we've established that, let's look at the parameters for entry. I right click my mouse and using the TFC software that I have developed, I simply right click the mouse and I place an order. And now bam, that order is in. Now I have predefined a stop loss always, it's just 100 points, but the reality is I use a smaller stop loss for espresso. And then I'll do a sell order down here. So now the 2 orders in, and this takes place a few seconds before the markets open. So you have to be quite nimble. And I'm working on a shall we say, an add-on to TFC, the trade from chart, so that we simply click a button and then the orders are filled based on the last 5 minutes. So that's coming in the next edition, I think. So now that we have that, and we know at 75 is where we went long, we just clear all the drawings and just clear these orders out. We don't want them hanging around. So there you go. Get rid of this. Now, when you have an opening bar like this, some price action experts will say, measure it, because it could easily become part of a measured move. And by a measured move, we're arguing here that if I buy above the high of this bar 1, which is at 24,873, I should technically have a stop loss below this low, which is at 732. So it's a bar size. I won't say it's big or small. I'll just say it is. It's just 108 points. And so the argument then becomes, if I enter long there, should I expect a measured move up? Well, double of 108 is 216. And that would take us up to this price level here. Thereabouts. So that's a measured move. That's a measured move of bar 1. I'm not having any luck with adding to my winning positions, even if it's trading ridiculously small size today. I wanted to show you something. We're going to do this together. We have 3 minutes until school run materializes. Now I know roughly what's going to happen here. So let's just, we draw that line there as a reference point, and then we give it a spunky color. There we go. And we'll keep an eye on the DAX on the other screen. So here we are looking at the DAX from yesterday, and we're looking at about 3 hours into the session. So I was trading this. As it happens, we were no longer streaming, but I was trading this by myself, and I'm thinking, if you saw something like this, how would you attack it? Maybe you can take a screenshot of the YouTube screen, but you know, there are a million different ways that one could look at this. Here's one. You can say, well, okay, we got to push lower from the overnight range. Then we have the establishment of a trading range. So we could expect to go back down here. But if you look at it isolated from the open, you gotta push higher. And is it a bear channel? Well, it certainly has a higher high, but then we got a low and a lower low and a lower low. But so what are we expecting here? And I think it's important that you put yourself in a situation like this and you train. You say, well, how would I deal with that? If I put some of the conventional measures that I use. So, okay, well, the first retracement was 70 points. And the second retracement was 95 points. And right now we've retraced 60 points. So do I think this is over? Probably not. But others would argue, well, hang on. You got 3 drives down. You got 1. You got 2. And you got 3. Well, but others would say, yeah, but the starting point is one is lower than the other. Well, some would say, well, it's so marginally. Okay, so the last retracement up that we had was 44 points. And the prior one was 73 points. If we copied that in, we would get a target up here for whatever this is. Others might say, nah, that doesn't make much sense. We need to have a Fibonacci ratio. And you can see that the last retracement was about 50%. But the critics of that would say, yeah, that's all very well, but if I deployed that method over here, it wouldn't have worked out for me. So if you now begin to look at the individual bar, if you just look at the bar and say, well, what am I dealing with here? You can say, okay, this bar here, that is now materializing here. We get a new low. I'm just looking at the DAX because school run is now active. You're getting a new low. But some would say that's all very well, but you got a first push up here. So this is a buy area. And others would say, you see this bar here? And I think that's a really important point. This bar here significantly marks a departure for the trading range. We are going into a trading range in this area here. I'm sorry I don't have bar numbers on in eSignal. And so part of the research and the documentation I want to do for myself and for you is to argue how frequent it is that when you go down and retest, and some would call it an impulse bar up, some would call it I call it a road sign. Others would just call it an expansion of range. And that was actually a term that Paul Tudor Jones taught me, not personally, but through a simulation. He called that, you get an explosion out of a trading range and you need to pay attention to that. Well, we're retesting that low, right, that area, so right there. So say that you wanted to be a seller of a break. And you would say, I am going to sell short here, right here on close, and I'm going to have a stop loss the size of the measured move. So I'm going to have a stop loss up here. So now well, I'm probably going to risk that amount of points, 52 points. If that's the case, I probably would like to get rewarded. And so that would take me down to a target at 25,006. The flip side could be made too. You say, you know what? I want to be a buyer here. Well, if you're a buyer here, your risk to reward ratio might be completely different, because you could technically argue, well, how much should I risk? Should I just have a stop loss here, betting that this won't? Well, the odds of you being stopped out are high, but my God, the risk to reward would be amazing if you could buy here, have a stop loss here, but you're gunning for a 2-to-1 or 1-to-1. Well, you would be risking 10 to make 50. That's a rather compelling narrative, isn't it? That is how some traders think. If I'm really thorough, I would be thinking like that too. While at other times, I will be just looking at the price action. So there we go. So let's just keep that green line there, because then the chart is static. So right now, we might say, well, that was 70 points. We're getting close to that. So maybe down here is the completion of this 1, 2, 3 moves down. But others would say, well, hang on, why am I looking for a reversal? Why not just keep buying? Sorry, keep selling short. And I get that argument. I think we're very quick to often want to highlight the reversal. I got nothing in school run, so we can continue this. So now we will get one more bar. And so what I could do, if you think it could be beneficial, is I will do a 5 seconds per bar, and then we play it. So now we are getting a bar. I'm just going to pause. So now we got a bar that went below the 2 prior bar lows but closed above. That kind of bar here is what we call an outside bar. You have slight expansion of range by definition because it goes below the prior bars and it closes above the prior bars, both of them. But is this enough to push the market all the way back up again? Well, maybe, maybe not. If I drew a retracement level, I don't see anything majorly important, but I can add some exotic percentages. For example, I could say, let's try 0.66 and apply that. So, okay, that's interesting. That's a 66%. And then, if that's the case, give me 0.33, because then that could become a target. So now we play a bit more. So now we get a big push up. And now the 66%er that bought, how much would they have risked down there? If you bought at the 66%, what would they have risked? Would they had a stop loss all the way down here? These are important questions to ask and answer, because you don't want to have a stop loss that is a million miles away. It doesn't make much sense to me to be a buyer up here with a stop loss down there. It's too much risk. So you might say, I am going to, at this point here, I'm going to say, well, we hit 25,053, which I had earmarked. Maybe I was fast enough with an order. Maybe I wasn't, because that's also part of the equation. The machine's algorithms will have areas highlighted where they want to be buyers and sellers. And I think much of the work that we need to do is to do an audit after the day is over and say, well, why is it triggering at this level? Why do I see a reversal here? And I can show you just a little bit more, because I think that's the key point to what I'm doing right now with you, is to say, up here, this point right here, I think turns out to be the top. And I was on board this move from about here. But now, to me, it gets interesting, because now we are getting, this is going to turn out to be a top, by the way. And so I'm looking at it and I'm thinking, right, I am aware of this, and we've gone above 76 points. So I think we should go up to the old high. But that didn't happen. And so the part of the research that I then do is, why does it stop right there? Why is that an important point. And I think you can learn a lot as a developing trader, but also as someone who's call themselves a professional and making a living from it, and say, why are we stopping there? Because this creates a bull trap. You got bulls jumping in, and now we get a close below. That is not good. That is not good news for them. This bar here is almost like this bar here. And the moment we close below that, you had 40, 50 points higher, and eventually you're getting 50 points lower. Do you see what I mean? And we test the break point right here. So you can understand why is that a high? Why could we sell here? But this one here, well, if you don't know the answer, then you begin to try and figure out why. The first thing you probably do is you say, let me draw a horizontal line through it and say, well, what's special about it? What is so special about 25,142 that warranted to be the high? Now, I can't give you the answer because I don't know. I don't know exactly what the machines or other traders saw to make that the high. You can sort of understand why that's the high. You take out the prior high by a little bit and then you reverse. Maybe you can understand this point here, well, that's a 66%. Well, if that's the case, do I need to begin to look at retracements in a different light? Do I go, okay, well, you know what? This is a new retracement. It's 0.66. Well, that didn't quite work. But again, it's not far off. Another measure that has been touted is 0.71. Well, that's a little closer. So do you see, ladies and gentlemen, how trading can become incredibly geeky? But the geekiness can really drive your effort to have incredibly sharp entries where you have as little risk as possible. Let's go back to the market, which, by the way, hasn't done a whole lot. You got 5, 6, 7, and 8 just being basically trading range bars, and you are now confronted with either do I sell this short as a school run traditionally, or do I buy it as an ante? What do you think? Well, if I go to my software, let me just launch that. So this morning we had a slight gap down. We opened slightly gap down. So I'll plot that in. It is a Friday. And we know that the first bar was positive. And we know that the second bar was positive. And we know that the second bar was an inside bar. So we have 37 examples over the last 8 years where that has happened, where we have a gap down, but then bar 1 and bar 2 on the 15-minute is positive. So we can go through them and see what happens if the school run is tested at the lows. And I think if I then test short entry and then strategy run the analysis. Okay, so testing the short side has an incredibly high win rate. Maybe because that's where the surprise is. Obviously, it depends on your stop loss and your take profit. But if we just ignore that for the time being, and we just hide strategy level, sure, come. Same. Let's keep an eye on bar 2. Do we buy or do we sell? Well, here we definitely buy. Later we could sell. Here we definitely buy, and later we could sell. Here, oh, that's a tight range. I imagine that eventually a buy signal turned out okay, but so too did a sell signal later. Here the buy did not work out, and you know what? Neither did the sell. So let's hope that this is not a repeat of Friday, the 25th of January, because that's nasty. You have an entry around 470 and the market goes as high as 79.80. And then it reverses and it goes back. That's the kind of thing that will kill your account. Here, sure, sell short could have worked, but not for long. Entry 440, we go as low as 420. So we can all dream of these wonderful scenarios where we buy and it just plows in our direction. And they are around. What I will be looking at is how is the second bar closing, because that's got relevance. Do you see here how we close near the high? That gives more impetus. This one, not as convincing example, because you barely have a second bar that goes above prior bar high. I'm just going to ignore that because the range is so tight. This is a good example because here we close quite convincingly above the prior bar, and you have some wick but not a whole lot, but you get no follow through. Although the bulls does fight for about 30 minutes, but then they give up, only to then regroup at the tests of the opening low. So let me go through them sort of relatively quickly so you can see that. What I would say with this is this would not necessarily be the kind of bar that I would associate with good follow through, but it did create good follow through. This is the kind of bar that I would associate a strong close with almost no wick, and it did produce good follow through. And this is the kind of bar that I would associate with not good follow through, and eventually you do get it, but my God, you have to wait. And here we're triggering a long, and no sooner can you sit and nurture a loss this is the kind of bar that I would associate with poor follow through, and you did get poor follow through. The same here. But then you get poor follow through on the downside as well. So it's becoming more and more clear to me that how we trade the school run this morning, it needs to be done with extreme caution. And we can look at the DAX from a conventional measure and say, okay, we got a school run short at 877 and a long at 948. But if we look at the 5-minute bar, we say, well, is it just creating a trading range? And we're going to have to answer that question now, because this is it. This is the point where you either pull the trigger on the long side, i.e. buying an ante, or you pull the trigger on the short side and you do a conventional short. Or you decide to, I'm not going to take this one, because that's not normally how a good school run pans out. A good school run has more or less immediate follow through, but we don't. Bar 3 is an inside bar, and with inside bars, it often makes more sense to be trading the ante, meaning I'm going to be a buyer around here, because the inside bar has now defined the trading range. So if you go to a smaller time frame, you see, well, it's a trading range. And with trading ranges, we do perhaps the very opposite thing of what we would do when we are breakout traders. And by definition, the school run is a breakout strategy. And you are allowed to change your mind, and change your mind really quickly. But for the purpose of this, I would now like to be a buyer of the DAX. Okay, the low is 78, and did we just hit 78 as well? 77.7. We actually just made a new low by 0.3. See that? And that kind of just proved my point. Didn't get my fill, but that sort of proves my point that this last bar actually took out the low that I was referencing by 0.3 of a point, and buyers stepped in. So I know we are very keen to develop really hard, solid, and concrete trading rules to operate by, but you also have to get used to, somewhat operate in the gray zone where you build an argument for yourself. Yeah, of course, it's a little bit annoying that I just didn't press buy at 80. It would be more convincing for the rhetoric I'm putting forth. But perhaps look past that and just say, right, so that's the argument that you're going through. I hope that made some sense to you. Okay. There is a saying that I heard a long time ago, and it went like this, or goes like this: don't short a market just because it's quiet. It's like, maybe. Well, I'm looking at the range of the open and how far it traveled. Do you see how we almost got that measured move? You know, bar 4 points. And settlers came in. Yeah. Look, we've been streaming an hour. It's not exactly fireworks. We're back down to the lows. I'm quite happy to sit this one out. I think I'll save my energy for the US session. Stop loss to break even on the FTSE. What I wanted to do there was to build more of a position. You could also say, well, has the FTSE fulfilled the measured move? Well, the first push up was 37 odd points. And the second push up was 45. DAX is actually breaking below. No. I think I'm gonna try and I put in a sell order at the break area. The break area is 78. I just put in a sell order there. Because now you can argue that 13 attempted, it's not a very convincing bar, but 13 attempted to establish a push up to new highs, and that failed. And so you're going to have people trapped here, but the bar isn't overly big in range. It's about 27 points. So 2 times 27 is 56. We'd be able to get down there, maybe. Well, anyway, I put in a little short position. My stop loss is just floundering up here. I'll put the stop loss here. So I am trading really small size. And perhaps I'm wrong. Perhaps this again should have been traded like the ante. What you can do in a situation like this is place the stop loss above the high of the break bar. Ideally, I would do that after the bar is completed, but in this case here, considering I'm not actually trading with real intensity or seriousness, I'm risking 15 points. What would make me think this is not going to work out is the fact that the FTSE is making new highs. So let's see this trade through to its completion, either being stopped for minus 15, which I think is the more likely outcome. And if so, if you don't want to have a loss, get out now. Just take a point loss or point profit. And then there's just this tiny, much smaller chance that we've seen the high for the morning. But still, with a placement of a stop loss like that, the odds are quite big that you were going to get stopped out. Look at the FTSE. However, you could also argue, well, the surprise side here is the short side with that kind of push higher. But we saw with the situation analysis software that it is likely. It could very well be a 19th of August 2022. Big push up and then a slow. Hello, my name is Austin Powers and I'm slow. Hello, my name is Alan Rickman and we're trading slow. So it could be a slow move. Speak slower. Slower. So here's the 19th of August. Big push up. And then the grind. So maybe our objective should be the lows. Let's see how we're doing. Not a lot. Not a lot going on. It's slow, but right now we are on the right side of the market. And with that in mind, ladies and gentlemen, I think this is a great time to say, you know what? If we get stopped out, we get stopped out. Take your profit if you want to. Let it run if you want to. The decision is yours. I am going to close the stream here We've been streaming for a little over an hour. We had a great move up in the DAX. And personally, just how I feel today, not overly fussed. And I have a little sneaky long in the FTSE that just keeps going. And now the DAX is coming back into the trading range, it would seem. And my stop loss now, looking at the 5 minutes, like, yeah, that's the worst place you could have a stop loss, isn't it? It might look okay on the 15-minute chart, but on a 5-minute chart, that's an awful place to have a stop loss. You would want to have it up there. But I'm not moving. I don't move stop losses if I place them for the public to see. It's just poor form. I'd rather take the loss and just stay true with the integrity. It's like, oh, you know, I'm just going to move the stop loss all the way up here now because I don't want to lose. No, it's not how it works. So there you go, ladies and gentlemen. It was an enjoyment to have your company today. I'll leave you with seemingly a DAX that doesn't know what it wants to do. And we had a great I had a great espresso, and that's that. Which is ironic because I hate the smell of coffee, and I've never tasted coffee in my life. Another quirk of mine. Well, there you go. See you later. Love you lots. Stay strong. Bye-bye for now.